think I made it work. Hello, everybody. All right, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt, and I'm really hoping that Facebook is going... Oh, it worked. Christina Previtt here. I am one of two lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. We're an 8-week online course that is aimed at helping providers allow women to explore their athleticism throughout their entire journey in motherhood, from pregnancy to postpartum and beyond. We have our next online cohort that is starting January 11th, and we are already almost 70% sold out, which is really exciting. We have a lot of interest in this cohort, and we just went through a massive revamp. So we have a whole bunch of new material that is coming at you. If you guys have been following me or my company, Stave Off Online, for any period of time, you know that for several years now, we have had a program called Strong Like Mom. This is a postpartum, well, we have some women who've come during pregnancy, but mostly a postpartum exercise class that is run by myself, other pelvic PTs that are working with us, or for some of my my fitness providers that are trained or have specific knowledge and skill sets around pregnancy and postpartum. And the reason why we did this actually was based on some of the work in my PhD. So an aspect of my PhD was to do a scoping review that looked at where physiotherapists or physical therapists can get involved in health and wellness. And obviously the geriatric space was highlighted, but in terms of primary and secondary prevention aims, the pre-postnatal space was one that was not only was it highlighted as an area where we can get involved in practice, but it's also an area that there is some literature to support the role of PT in helping to support women during this time. And so we started a program called Strong Like Mom. And so this program started 4 years ago. And since then, it's been really exciting. Not only have I been able to see my mom's families grow, their children grow, which is a really empowering and just such a life-giving part of my job. But I've also been able to help facilitate return to things like impact and heavy lifting in a way that may be slightly non-traditional. So today what I wanted to do was talk a little bit to you about the Strong Like Mom program, some of the things that we consider, and how you can get involved with trying to help women in this time in their life. And we can finish up a bit with some COVID considerations depending on what your state or province legislation is looking like and what that means from a spacing perspective. Okay, so the first thing is that one way that Strong Like Mom has been a really important piece of my business plan is that not only is it itself an income generator where we are able to charge a premium because there's a physio that is leading the class and is taking ownership of the class, but it is also a way for new moms to learn about how pelvic PT can help them postpartum, and it's become a physio referral source as well. So there's this really nice blended relationship where I can talk with my pelvic clients about joining Strong Like Mom. I can talk to Strong Like Mom about different pelvic things, and if there are certain flags that we aren't able to work through in a group-based setting, they can continue to see me one-on-one, internally or non-internally. And so this relationship has been really great for building our pelvic PT reputation in our community, which is really great. The second thing is that, as we know, postpartum can be really complicated. And so what that means is that we have a lot of moms who are struggling, and when it comes to things like mental health, being able to facilitate the connection of moms with each other who place value or enjoy physical activity in a gym setting has been really wonderful. So we have been able to allow moms, especially like I think about in COVID, it's been just highlighted so much more because so many things have gotten canceled, that being able to allow these moms to connect with each other, even if it's at a distance, and in a confined time domain, it has still allowed them to feel like some part of their maternity leave is normal. Because many women come into maternity leave, and I'm going to reference this, that in Canada, maternity leave is 12 to 18 months. I know that that is not necessarily the case in the US, but we can talk about that too. But, for women who have an extended maternity leave, they were always hoping to be able to go to moms groups and link up with other moms and have this sense of camaraderie during their postpartum period, their early postpartum period, so that they can share some of the stresses, concerns, and get ideas from other moms. And the Strong Like Mom class has been able to do that. From a pelvic PT perspective, sometimes when you are doing a group-based model with women who are at very different stages postpartum, there are some really important considerations for what you're going to be doing. Number one is managing expectations postpartum. Especially if you have individuals who are very athletically inclined or very type A, and they have been dreaming about getting back to their previous level of athleticism postpartum, it can be really challenging to try and hold them back when they are early postpartum. So if they are 6 weeks and they are seeing somebody who is 9 months postpartum doing something much higher impact, much higher intensity. And oftentimes what that means is, when I start class, we start by managing expectations, talking about things like healing timelines, and connecting what we are doing from a exercise selection perspective and linking it to where we are at when it comes to the pelvic floor. And of course, there are going to be, again, so many considerations there. If they had higher degree tears, if they had a cesarean section versus a vaginal delivery, if they had an episiotomy versus natural tearing, if they had a forceps delivery versus spontaneous vaginal delivery, all these things are going to come into play. And we have to try and speak to them as much as possible when it comes to the postpartum period. So managing expectations is one. Number two is, in a group-based setting, sometimes we obviously do not get the hour assessment time that we usually take with a pelvic PT assessment. So we have to, quick and dirty, get an idea about where women are at. And usually that is an open-ended question for me. It's like, how do you think your labor and delivery went? And how do you feel like you're recovering now? And that gives me a lot of information around where a woman's mindset is when it comes to exercise, how she feels about herself and her transition into motherhood or transition into motherhood again. All of these things are going to come into play, and it can really help to facilitate that conversation. And sometimes that means that I'm saying, you don't have to see us, but seeing a pelvic PT would probably be a good idea, because it'll give us some insight into what is going on, and it'll help us cater your exercise program. So that's number two. Number three is trying to cater to women who are 6 weeks postpartum and just getting started versus women who are 8 months postpartum. There's a lot of healing that happens there, and there is a lot of changes in terms of what a female's body is ready for when they are further away from delivery than when they're very early on. What that means is that usually when I'm teaching the class, we are talking a lot about levels. I hate calling it scaling, or I hate talking about modifying things down. I talk about it in regards to levels and where your body is ready for, and I give some general anchors for where I would expect you to be, what level I would expect you to be at based on where you are postpartum. And of course, there are going to be differences there, but it gives women an idea and gives them permission to recognize that their body is not yet ready for things. So an example can be if we're starting to do core work in class and we're doing hollow rocks. Hollow rocks, extremely advanced core exercise. Many athletes who have not just had a baby find them extremely challenging or have an issue with pressure mismanagement while performing that exercise. And so we can have Level 1 being a static isometric dead bug. Number 2 is an isometric where they're slowly bringing their arms or legs out a little bit further. Level 3 can be a movement of the legs where they are allowing them to go into more of a hollow rock position and then come back in. Level 4 can be trying to just do a static hold of a hollow rock and kind of go into that static hold and come out, in and out. And then level 5 can be rocking back and forth with the rep scheme that is prescribed for today's exercise class. And so that is just an example off the top of my head, and those are not set levels, but just ways that you can break it down. And so if I have those 5 levels, I'm gonna say, probably the first 6 or 8 weeks postpartum, you're gonna be thinking about level 1, where you're in the isometric dead bug. After there, you can kind of play around with levels 2 through 4, right? Because for somebody who has potentially a cesarean section, they may be a little bit more sensitive to core work than somebody who had a vaginal delivery. You may have an individual with a more persistent diastasis recti that has not yet gotten to a level of function where women feel comfortable with force transfer across the anterior core wall. And then the timelines at which they get into, levels 2, 3, and 4 is going to be different. Level 5, which is an actual hollow rock, we have some clients who might not ever get there, but usually we're probably going to say you're going to want to be at least 6 months postpartum. For example, again, these are just like timelines that are off the top of my head. But by setting those expectations and managing healing in a group setting, there's a way for us to be able to try and cater to the needs of our clients. So the fourth thing as well is like managing across different timelines postpartum is around manipulating breath. We as a faculty with CMFA pregnancy and postpartum believe that you do not need to be inhaling and exhaling with strength training all of the time postpartum if that is not your goal. So if I have a power lifter or a weightlifter who is in my class, she's going to be wanting to get back to Valsalva, and breathing through a lift is sometimes an unrealistic expectation given that we have close glottis lifting that occurs at 80% of a 1 rep max, which can occur in day-to-day life or in a class, whether we think about it or not. We sometimes too, coming back postpartum, we actually don't know when we hit that threshold of 80% because that's changed over time. So we talk about what are the symptoms to look out for. So if I have a client where we're doing back squats for the strength portion of the day, we're gonna teach the back squat. We're always gonna teach first, irrespective of where you are. We're gonna give levels in range of motion, we're gonna give levels in load, and we're gonna give levels in breath work. If you have a client who's experiencing pelvic girdle pain or any sort of low back injury, we might try something like a box squat. But then the other thing we're gonna talk about is the pelvic floor and breath work. What that oftentimes means is, say we're doing a 5x5 back squat as our strength component, I'm gonna say, if you are feeling any symptoms of pelvic heaviness, bulging in the vaginal area, or feeling like you are going to leak in the bottom position of the squat, know that this is common, but we can change or improve those symptoms. When you are in the bottom of the squat, that is when your pelvic floor is in a more relaxed position, which means that we may have to use some interventions to try and improve the amount of muscular contraction we have in that more vulnerable position. What that can look like is an exhale as you stand up. So you're gonna inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up. For some women, because the pelvic floor is reflexive, we are going to blow before we start to stand up, which is manipulating when we initiate the exhale of the lift. And if you are not feeling any of those symptoms and you feel comfortable starting to work on that Valsalva, try and just don't even focus on your breath at all, just try to not breathe before we start thinking about increasing the level of abdominal tension to assess where your body is ready or what load your body is ready for when it comes to introducing a Valsalva into your exercise class. By doing that little preamble, it probably feels like I'm talking a lot in my class. Sometimes you have to. It allows women to feel empowered to know what their options are, know what their triggers to scale are, and allows them to, think about what they can do to improve symptoms when they come on when they're in a group setting. because sometimes they're not going to want to flag me down and say, like, Christina, I feel like I'm peeing every single time. I have some women who do feel comfortable, like, talking about that openly. We try to create a very open dialogue when it comes to those types of things. But you want to make sure that you are trying to give your clients the information as much as possible. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is when it comes to cardio, as much as you want to keep people safe, you also want to give them a really good workout. And there are so many low impact or postpartum friendly options, even for very early postpartum, that we can put into a women's exercise program so that they are feeling like they had a really good workout. So manipulating things like EMOMs, AMRAPs, 5 rounds per time, 6 rounds per time, working in time domains, working in work domains, all those types of things that the CrossFit programming has really introduced to rehab even can be really beneficial. And just recognizing too that I would probably anchor cardio saying, as fatigue is coming on board when it comes to cardio, you may actually start to feel some symptoms. Here are some modifications if that does happen. Feel free to move up and down the levels as you go through the cardio portion of this class based on how you feel. And so all of those things are going to be extremely important. And so lastly, the thing that I want to talk about a bit was with COVID. Usually what we have done is so in my province, so again, this is going to be gym dependent, and talking to your gym owners, it's going to be important to know the rules. For us, children under the age of 2 are not considered to be additional people in our numbers perspective. We are in a point right now in Kingston, Ontario, where we are allowed to have 10 people in a room, and our instructor has to be masked and shielded. And they have to be 3 meters apart, not 2 meters apart, because our numbers have been going up. What we have done is we have created bubbles where the woman is expected to keep her child in the bubble. And so what that has allowed us to do is create a space where we can have 9 women plus me and their babies in our gym space. Is about 3,000 square feet. And so the amount of space you have available is going to be important. And it's allowed us to kind of create a community, but also make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines. So the important thing from a COVID perspective is to know is if the child counts in the number count, because that's going to be a really important consideration when it comes to the amount of people that you can have in the space and the amount of time that you're going to be able to spend, because we have some time restrictions as well. Lastly, I probably wouldn't recommend going above 9 or 10 people. It can be really overwhelming when you have a very complicated group of women postpartum who have a lot of things going on. This is kind of similar to some of the conversations I've had about older adult exercise programs when it's really complicated. You want to make sure that you are not, that you are having enough time to be able to cater to each woman's needs and check in with them. And if the numbers are too high, sometimes it can be really, really hard to do that. So I probably, like, the restrictions for me don't bother me at all because they are where I would be anyway. All right, I hope you guys found that helpful. I hope that you will think about potentially, if you are interested in this space, especially if you're somebody who has taken CMFA pregnancy and postpartum, you know that we are big advocates for allowing women to come back into their athletic selves. And having programs like this has been, it's been very life-giving for us. For myself as a clinician, I just love teaching that class and getting to see all the babies and seeing all the moms. But also, it has really created a space for women to explore their athleticism postpartum in a way that they feel safe to do so. And so if this is not something that you are interested in, I hope that you can connect with different providers in your community so that they know that you exist and you know that they exist, and there can be a nice referral network that can happen there. All right, I hope you all found that helpful. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. I'm sorry I was a little bit delayed on Facebook. I don't know, it was kind of glitchy this morning, technology. But other than that, have a wonderful week, everyone, as we get close to the holiday season, and I will see you again soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptionice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.